he will give his paper entitled Exploring Rural Transformation in Malaysia, a case study of rice cultivation area in Sabah, Vietnam. I'm very fortunate to have studied that area from 79 to 1985. I don't know whether they are the same, but I learned from the paper they have changed quite a lot. And then the next one is our colleagues from Bali, isn't it? I'm from Indonesia. Where? Which part of Indonesia?
Central Java.
Central Java, yes. And strengthening rural economic institution, the case of organic rice farming in Central Java, Indonesia. The paper is co-writers, Holly, Jasron, and Iwan, yeah? And then the next one by Baldan Muhammad. Where's Baldan? He's having lunch. She is going to talk about new rurality, new entrepreneurs, and the new poor. I want to know who is this new poor. Yeah? Does it include middle class in the urban area? And then next is Eric, Kebun Culture and Emergent Rural Phenomena. The next one is Khairul Hisham from UTM of Community-Based Rural Tourism. This is an interesting one because we always talk about rural area relating to agriculture, but it's talking about rural area and community-based tourism. And we were going to miss sixth paper by Suryati Ghazali and Polonius Atam. They are not able to come today, so they promised to send me the papers. Yes, Eric, welcome. I know, we just had a nice makan. So I'm just introducing the people then. So what we have today is an interesting mix of papers. And we are given until 3:45 to complete this exercise. And I have here instruction that says everyone or each paper has 15 minutes. Each paper giver has 15 minutes to present. And then we have probably 10 minutes or less my comment. And then we open it for question and answer session. So we pull together all the questions so that we can respond each. And we can cross-reference probably between papers. Yeah? So I will invite first Professor Ibrahim to make your presentation, 15 minutes. I'm not a draconian man, but I will stop on 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Chairman of this session. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon to everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank Professor Eric Thompson for organizing this kind of also motivate me to come to present my paper in this conference. So this is my first experience with MSCD, and we have another conference within our group next week, that is on the research and planning group. So it's a very good opportunity to share my experience on research at this area of rural development, planning and development. So the topic that I'm going to present to you is on exploring rural transformation in Malaysia. Case study in Sabah, Vietnam. This is based on my current research, rural transformation in Malaysia. So this is basically the first part of the study. So I've completed this and we will explore further in other areas we identified in Pahang. And in fact, I was organized with undergraduate students last semester to do this very case many other villages in other part of Malaysia. So we have more than 6 students looking into this area as well. So I will discuss briefly first on this theoretical framework, rural transformation, and then straight away go to the case study in Sabah, Vietnam, based on the project. I would say the preliminary findings from the first stage of the research. So this from teacher review. So these are the two major theoretical debates. One on the rural transformation. One is productivism and post-productivism, which originated in UK. And the other one is de-agrarianization. This one is more later. These studies in third world countries. So basically, this productivist farming regime is described as a commitment to an intensive, industrially driven, and specialist agriculture, instead support based primarily on output and increased productivity. Basically, more on this modern agriculture practice. And the post-productivism is on the hand which emerged in 1980s in UK, in particular refer to farming practices that revert to the use of less intensive production methods, rely on fewer chemical inputs, and less use of high-yielding varieties of plant, livestock, and moving to environmental conservation of farm and sustainable agriculture. So more on eco-friendly, moving towards more environmental friendly practice in farming. So these are some of the, I'm not going to go through the characteristics of this productivist and also post-productivism approach in this agriculture practice. So these are the underlying forces for that transformation towards this modern agriculture practice towards more environmental friendly. Because of in the Western countries, because of growing awareness of the environmental damage caused by intensive farming and the shift of consumer preference to organic food, concern over ongoing cost of supporting overproduction rural sectors, too much subsidy on the rural sector, and pressure from globalization and new liberal economy because of this dismantling of this regulation. And another framework is a modification from this debate. What Wilson add on to the final transformation is towards multifunctional agriculture regime. But he commented that this kind of farming might occur concurrently, so it's very much territorial based because certain part of the country must still have practice on this with productivist farming, and maybe the other part moving towards post-productivist and also multifunctional agriculture. This much very much based on experience in European countries. But the concept in terms of third world countries is very much de-agrarianization, the long-term process of occupational adjustment, income earning orientation, social and education, spatial relocation of rural dwellers away from strictly agricultural-based mode of livelihood. Basically, simply to simplify it, it's very much diversification of rural economic activities from very much depending on agriculture to diversification. It's very much happening from my experience in the field study in the changes of rural economic activities towards diversification. And this recent work, Preston MD, on this is very much concept based on also European experience, but we think that might be based on the previous review of the literature and work experience. We found that there might be three directions of change of this agriculture activities. One is towards regrounding, very much related to what you call diversification of economic activities towards non-farm activities. Another direction is broadening, still farm-based but new kind of crops or activities related to that. Another one, deepening, that is related to organic farming, also this thing, local product, that's another direction of change. But in our studies, in my study, the recent study, found that I will discuss further the deepening one is less what you call study Sabak Benang. I'm not going to describe in detail. So this Sabak Benang area, the circle, right? And that is the giant land use of Selangor. This is Selangor. Selangor is our most developed state. But Sabak Benang is the least developed district in Selangor. So you can see from this the population distribution and growth by district. There's a 1980 to 2010. Sabak Benang experienced negative growth compared to other developed districts. Like Sepang now growing very fast. Gombak, Kelang, compared to Sabak Benang. And you can see Sabak Benang special about this is because it has the ras cultivation area, considered as ras bowl of Malaysia. So guys, the village that I selected is in 7 Sabak Sungai Besar area. So my study village is in the Parit 1 Barat and Parit 6. So one is very near to the town, Sungai Besar. So, but in my paper, the data so far I processed for this kampung, Parit Barat, very near to this border to the Sungai Besar. So these are the agriculture crop in Sabak Benang. You can see the changes, the paddy cultivation has reduced from 1995, 25,000 hectares to 2013, almost half, 75. And you can see the palm oil increased quite drastically, not because of commission, but because of the new area they explore and then they cultivate into palm oil. And then we have in this Sabak Benang, special there is government policy because of this food security. So, for food security in 2010, Malaysia target to have to be self-sufficient, 70% level of self-sufficiency in rice production. And because of that, there's a lot of subsidy provided by the government in the study area of Malaysia. These are the list of subsidy provided by government in order to sustain the rice cultivation area, because rice cultivation area, rice cultivation in Malaysia is not that competitive. So unless the government provide subsidy to the farmers or the owner of the land, then only they will continue planting rice. So altogether, you can see the subsidy amount of 2,700 per hectare for each season. And you can see the put it price subsidy, pesticide, fertilizer, all this total 2,700. And also we have another physical planning policy because we want to achieve the policy of rice sufficiency. So that in planning also we have this policy to conserve the main rice cultivation area. This includes Sabak Benang. So measure include the paddy area to be gazetted as paddy land and to establish the limit paddy area. So this is the policy. And
We have 5 minutes.
okay. So these are the profile of Kampung Parit 1 Barat. Although the area you go there, you can see the very green agricultural land, but in terms of farming, the farmers only 12.8% of the household. And for the total also about that, about 40%. And ownership of land very more less than mainly less than average 1 hectare. So this productivity per season, because of subsidy, if you have an hectare of land, so the net income have to reduce all this the input, you can get about 5,000. Almost constant because of place is quite where what you call wide diversity in this infrastructure. So these are the income. You can see here the role of farming activities. Non-farm, total non-farm income contribute about 20%. The income from farming activities only 20%. That is a contribution of farming in the area. And in terms of the income of household income, you find that there's a lot of money, diversification of source of income, including remittance, quite popular also. 3.7%, and income from other members also 44%, and the PIT also only contribute 42%. And we also have a quite disparity of income between the farmers. The disparity is about 4.47 and 4.9, almost similar to the national level. So we heard from this Kino paper that our national level is about 4.6, 0.46. And also we also observe in terms of direction of change towards organic farming. Also this environmental friendly farming not occurring obvious in that area. Although there is an initiative in 2012 that the agriculture department have for this program to introduce, but not quite successful because of various reasons, including lack of incentive, no facilities cater for the organic farming, conflict of interest, and also the owner tend not to be interested to introduce this new practice of farming. So we also find new economic activities coming up in the area, including homestay. There are a few homestays we also interview the homestay owners, and they seem to be quite successful. There are few, and the activities are quite coming. But however, because of limited attraction in the area, I think the expansion of this homestay will be quite limited in the future. As my concluding remark that from the preliminary observation of first study in Sabah, so these de-agrarizations tend to be what we call relevant framework to understand rural change in Malaysia, because looking at the framework developed in the UK, the direction of change towards this environmental friendly does not appear to be what I call occur in the study area, and also we also observe that the occurrence of this land conservation, land conversion, and also migration of younger generation from that area. This is quite common phenomena. But the interesting one is the land conversion. I think although there is a policy to prevent the encroachment of this urban activities in friendly area, but it seems not to be quite successful because of the pressure for the market forces or for the need of the people. I think that's all. I think for the time being, if you have any other questions that we can discuss in the Q&A portion session afterwards. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps you should think how to compare with skin check. Yeah. You get I'm going to ask the question later. Okay. The second paper by Oli Bina Wijaya from Urban and Regional Planning Department, Diponegoro University, Indonesia. Silakan Pak. before he starts, when it will take 3 more minutes. It is going to be interesting because the last part of Brian's paper was on organic farming. He touches on organic farming. And this paper coming is all about organic farming. So we seem to have some continuity here, which is interesting.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor, for the time for me. Actually, first of all, I would like to introduce that my study in Indonesia, in Central Java, but actually it is in the series of the collaboration with the UTM, Professor Ibrahim. Actually, we are together make research on rural transformations. But in this time, I would like to present more specific aspect on the rural economic institution strengthening, especially in the context of organic rice farming in Central Java. So it quite contextual, micro aspect, but maybe it is in the agenda the comparisons among Indonesia and also Malaysia situations. Also, I would like to also introduce in the context of the sample, I would like to choose 2 areas in Central Java that might be mini representative of maybe Indonesia and Malaysia, because one, I think the farmer organization that mostly based on the top-down, was led by the village leaders, but the second it is farmer organization that come from the value of the government. Yeah? So maybe first I would like to introduce about the arguments, very specific one that I take it from Courtney. They refer to many reference that the rural developments actually are driven through the external resources that are facilitated by the internal and local resources. So also it also suggests that the nature and progress of conditions of the rural development will be determined by the variety of the territorial context, and the economic activities in rural area are the outcomes of processes driven by both local and also non-local, local and external. Let me see another in the context. So in my research, I would like to explore the implementation of the exogenous and endogenous of the forces in order to understanding a specific context of organic rice farming and farmer groups in rural context in Central Java. And also the forces and the interaction among external and internal forces should be the part of the institution strengthening to improve the organic agriculture and rural development. So let me introduce the context definition of institution I use in this presentation is I refer the institution as the role of rules and concern of on human behavior. So it should be sets of basic rules of conduct acknowledged by the community and usually enforced through some form of sanctions. So little bit different is the organization. If the institution represents the role of the games, the organizations represents the player structures. And if we said about the capacity, it should be the ability to perform the functions and identify to solve the problem efficiently and understand and deal with developments in the broader context. So it is important in here, I would like to say about the rural economic institution would be related with the rules and values program of the economic activity in rural people. at least in my research context. And second thing is, if we are talking about the organic agriculture, it relates the production system that sustain the health of soil, ecosystem, and people. And also, organic agriculture will combine the traditions, innovations, and science in order to benefit the served environment and promote fair relationship, a good quality of life for all involved. And also, the options of approach will be self-reliance, also income generation and nature conservation. So it is not necessarily just the environment, yeah. And maybe some introductions of the progress of the work, just the brief. So in the work in just 2011, almost 37 million hectares that allocated for organic farming, and the most is in Australia. It is about 12 million, Argentina, and United States. I follow from the IFOAM, International Federation's Organic Farming. Mostly the producers is Australia, yes, and second is Argentina, it is 3.8, and the last is United States. But especially for the market itself, the European Union and the United States is the biggest one. Maybe it is related to the understanding of the people who would like to have better quality of food itself. Yeah? And if you see the tendency, it is not so far, not so long time for organic farming. It is a very steep trend of the increasing of the organic farming in the world, starting in 19 until now. And in Indonesia itself, I can note that actually it is not so long time for the mass productions. It is just started in 2000. You can see in 2007 it is very steep in 2008 until now. Yeah. Now it is about 200,000 of the areas allocated for the organic farming. So if I back to the case study, it is a case study in Central Java, actually this is in Java Island. So I come to the two areas in Central Java, just near to my university. One is Mahardika Farmer Group in Latikabe in Demak. It is the lowland area, so quite a flat area. But in the second one is the Al Barokah. It is just near to the mountain of Borbaku, mountain of Merapi that many eruptions every time, and it is a highland area. So quite good for the organic productions. So in this area, we meet with the farmers and also with the leaders of the farmers. The leader of the farmers of the Mahardika, actually the village head of village, yeah. It is just started in 2008, so it is not so long time. But in 2008, there is some program of the government to provide the facilitation for the organic farming in the village, and together with the technological transfer and facilities to the people who come to another area in West Java in order to learn how to make the organic farming. So then the promotion of natural farming in Maldives are also mostly based on the economic reasons that we found it. The efficiency of the production process, we found that because they just use the natural, this is from the cow, for the fertilizers, 0.5 million per hectare to become 5.5. Also, there is they just use the natural pesticides and so on, and so with the technology of the organic farming, the production cost will be decreased. And also, the second thing that we found in the Mahardika group is that the value of the price of the product itself will be higher, because if we see the price, the grain of the rice grains, if they just the common rice, it is just 4,000, but if this is they use the organic technology, the price will be higher. And also, and if it comes to the markets, also the price will be better. Also important, if we compare the Malaysia, the experience in Malaysia, in the Mahardika experience, they make their own market, because if they just sell the rice to the common market, this is no different price, but they collect all, and also they sell directly to their own market is different price. Yeah. So because people trust this groups. In this condition, actually, even I can talk that in the Mahardika it's not totally organic, because this is in lowland, maybe might be treated by another pollution, but they have a very big, quite big demands. Yeah, they still don't have enough capacity to fulfill the demand. The second is Albaraka that I need. This is the lead of the Albaraka. Actually, the Albaraka is not the village leader, but he is the religious leader. Why people would like to have organic farming in the Albaraka? Because they meet with the fight of the support of the government, especially the many programs of governments when come before the 2000s. There is the centralized regime. There is support, many support from the government, but after decentralized, the local government not have enough capacity to support all the farmer, and they quite feel neglected by the government. So they would like to have independent farming by themselves. Yeah, and so they start in 1999, and they have long time experience to have organic farming introduced to the groups, but that we found quite interesting. There is many farmers involved on that, but the performance quite same with the Mahardika. If we make some comparison Albaraka and Mahardika, Mahardika just 5 years, but Albaraka in 1999. But the farmer will be different. Yeah. Many farmers involved in the Albaraka, but the area quite the same, yeah, because in Mahardika it is just introduced by the village leaders, but in here involve many farmers. Take a long time, but a little bit different forces. If this is external forces, in Albaraka we found there is quite good networking of the local people and also independent innovations. But in here in Mahardika, the technology stakeholders. Actually, there is public sectors, market network, and facilitators. But in Algorka, it is based on the NGO and also the religions networking. So the internal forces in Algorka, this is mostly based on the religion network and social bonding and collective of the leaderships. In Mahardika, it's mostly because of the leadership of the village leaders. The village leaders already become the leaders for 10 years, and his fathers already 50 years become the village leaders. So quite have a strong leadership there. Yeah. So based on this contextual understanding, we found that in order to see the strengthening the natural rice farming institution in rural area, there is some context on that. Yeah, there is local setting context. Given that this is just in the Indonesia.
1 more minute.
Yeah, thank you. And I can say that mainly in Indonesia, this is motive mainly due to the economic reasons, efficiency of production costs, and more value added. And after that, based on the independent production process, yeah, and also natural friendly farming. And the last that I can say from the research that we found, there is variations of the local context. The factors relates to the motive, social value, leadership, and physical condition, also the knowledge of the people. And both of the empirical cases verify the theory from Korte and Watts that argument that rural development is driven through the exogenous and indigenous forces. And the last, based on the Mahardika and also the Algorka, higher challenge will be triggered by the forces to solve the problems. Yeah. Maybe that's all that I can say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Marna?
Take a long time.
Okay.
I go doctor.
Since Marna taking a long time,
No.
I have a few minutes left. Yeah?
Yeah.
I think the most interesting part in the last 2 papers has been the old argument in rural transformation about pumping more money, giving more help as a way of eventually measuring growth. But to what extent this pumping in funding, because that's why I raised the issue of in Kuala Selangor, in Sabah Bernam, you know that there's a group of Chinese farmers who have no subsidy, nothing, yeah? But doing better than the one that is fully subsidized. So I think it is an issue that one has to raise also. And in the case of in Sabah Bernam, there is an attempt to introduce organic farming, but to what extent organic farming again is a pumping in more money, more technology, new groups of people, actually only help the few that's being helped rather than as a generalized activities that can benefit the rest. So I think the issue is to what extent the spread of this support and help can actually be effective. Of course, case studies are case studies. You can always raise the issue of how special, how unique the cases are and how successful it could be. But I think we are also looking at the more general impact of the effort, because we keep saying about subsidy, which means government effort. Yeah? And that's where I think in many ways we have to re-examine these approaches. Yes, Marna, please.
Thank you, Council. This room is very awkward because it's so big and speaker is so far.
Well, this is the new rural.
Thank you very much. I think you said it all in one word. So no. But thank you everyone. So this paper that I'm going to give, and as you can see the title is up there. Lots of newness. It's just being provocative, of course, because it's a very or any kind of category that you're not sure of, or you think there could be some potential of it being something else. So that's why there's new rurality, new entrepreneurs, and the new poor. But actually, what I really want to do here, sorry. Okay, my main purpose, I hope you can see the writing up there. Basically, I want to kind of look at everything, at the rural processes from a very big picture. So I want to revisit the framing of rural studies. So you've heard the two presentations before. I think the premise is really that they're looking at rural case studies. So what I'm basically trying to question, can we kind of revisit the framing of the idea of rural studies? And then I want to question the epistemological boundaries of spatially linked phenomena. So rural, urban, they've got to do with space, and you tend to think that everything is related to space. So something that's outside of Kuala Lumpur, so that's not urban anymore, kind of idea. So that's it's related to the first revisitation. The third one is basically to also bring in the factor of agency or human factor in this revisitation of rural studies. I want to look at the position of class, ethnicity, and gender relations within this new framing. Of course, these are very big kind of questions that I want to propose, but basically I'm just going to kind of use three case studies that I sort of had I'm familiar with. And I want to look at my case studies that I've, well, the research I've done in Kelantan in 2008, research that I'm kind of starting in Perak at the moment, and I'm also looking at Felda. So Felda is a big factor. Everyone familiar with Malaysian development will know about Felda. So there is like all those question marks when you look at these three cases. So what are the questions on new rurality? If you go back to some of the other studies, of course I don't claim to be the first one doing this. There have been a lot of people who have questioned the idea of the framing of ruralization. So for example, the concept of peri-urbanization, that's been used very often. I think even Terry McGee, not even Tanya Ford, Terry McGee has got a lot of studies of Indonesia looking at areas that are at the boundaries of cities and urban centers. So the concept of peri-urbanization, which will kind of evoke some new phenomena, some new class relations, production relations, economic relations. I think that's a very done before. Now the second kind of concept, counter-urbanization, that's actually been done in Europe, in Western countries, more what we call developed economies, where some researchers have kind of observed this movement of people going back to the rural locales. So kind of giving up the cities and setting up your very idyllic, haven in the countryside. So that there's a kind of, there seems to have been a counter-urbanization movement, at least from the 70s onwards. That's been studied more thoroughly, of course, in Europe, but not actually really in Asia. Because maybe the phenomenon is not really that hard yet. Demographically, there's more, of course, rural to urban migration rather than the other way around. Now, Eric, of course, has done his own study in a village in so-called village in Perak, right? I think you use the concept of rural as being a kind of a social urban space. So even though it's rural, but socially, most of the production relations, social relations, kind of mirror the urban spaces. And then a study about actual studies in Africa. There's a study to kind of track the reversal of migration. Instead of from rural to urban, actually a lot of people, because they found unemployment in the cities, have kind of returned back to their rural places of origin. Okay? Because at least there's land and a resource to work on. So that's basically happening in Africa. Okay, then finally the concept rural dystopia, where I've used it in my study of Kelantan, where the idea of dystopia is just the opposite of utopia. Because people usually associate ruralness with peacefulness, of again, this idyllic kind of retreat where social evil, social ills that you associate with urbanization do not actually affect people in the rural areas. But my studies in Kelantan, this village in the northeast of Kelantan, which borders Thailand, now there are a lot of cases of not only just youth unemployment, but drug addiction. There have been a few serious crimes, sexual crimes, rape, murder in the village itself. Of course, you don't hear of it in the newspaper. So that's rural dystopia. But Bernadette Resurrection and Hati Van did a study on Vietnam. Yes, it's not really dystopia, but really to show how when women migrate out of the villages, not the men, because in Vietnam, somehow there's more work for women outside the villages. So there's a bit of a kind of a rearrangement in the village. Not tantamount to dystopia, but a kind of negotiation going on there, gender negotiation. And finally, the concept of corporatized rural, so that is something that I want to use on what we find in the settlements, the Felda settlements. They're not really rural, although I know right after the election, we've given like the main conclusion of the 2013 election was there was a rural-urban divide. Now, if you look deeply into where the constituencies that are known to be rural, actually a majority of the constituencies are actually housed within Felda settlement. So my question mark is that, are they really rural? Okay, so, Felda is a corporation now, and those of you who follow the news of Felda, you know that Felda settlers actually are not really peasants, they're actually shareholders. You and I may not really own much shares, but they own a lot of shares, okay, within this corporatized setup. So these are questions on the new rurality, and very quickly I'll just go on to my case studies, Northeast Kelantan, Perak River villages, and Felda settlements. Okay, the very quick observations in the Kelantan case, this idea of urbanized villages, Eric Thompson has done a study about villages, again, the features of urbanization. Now, in the Kelantan case, basically, although it's very remote, this village near Jeli, but only about very few people actually are involved in agriculture. I think the first paper actually showed the de-agrarianization kind of trend. So even in this village, not many people are involved in agriculture. Very poor actually, because most of them are not landowners, so they can't actually have control over what to use and how to use lands that have been left behind. I've spoken about the rural dystopia. There's a bit of reverse migration because a lot of young men and women who used to work in the factories before, in the 70s or 80s, actually had to return back. One is because they were getting older. Past the age of 40, you can't really work industrial jobs anymore. Women, after they've got children, they used to all migrate to Kedah and Penang to work in the factories. But past the age of 40, they had to return back to the village. So there was a reverse migration of some sort. And then finally, there's this unproductive agricultural activities because this is a very poor village and they are not able to use any of the resources in the villages. There's land, there's paddy, they try all kinds of cropping. Well, of course, in Kelantan, so past now is tried oil palm. Oil palm is probably the most successful crop that anyone can get into now. Just some statistics about the de-agrarianization. So you could see that the source of livelihood, only about 30% are involved in agriculture or rubber. The rest are either unemployed, they do kind of seasonal jobs, salaried employment, and so on and so forth. I think this is just one village, but if you go further, you could probably see the same trends elsewhere. Now the Perak case, because this is a new kind of area that I'm looking at. Now Perak is a slightly more developed state than Kelantan. So there's a lot of uneven development there. Some riverside villages have been completely abandoned. Now there's a huge Perak River. Terengganu River is nice and vibrant, but if you go to Perak, you go to all the villages around the river. Many of the riverside villages have been abandoned because of the roads that have been built not near the rivers, but inland, right? So a lot of sources of economic occupation are from the roads. However, there's some villages that have been developed by the state as resorts. For example, I don't know whether any of you've been to the Pasir Salam, heritage complex. That was supposedly, that was a place where Birch was murdered, that river. And so that particular village, was developed into a heritage center. There's a hotel there, there's a museum. And you can see across the river all these abandoned other villages. So it's very uneven. Actually, it's not doing too well. This resort, many people don't even go to this resort. Right, the other phenomenon, I won't have time to discuss all these case studies, are these new entrepreneurs. Now, you see, in comparison to Kelantan, where most of the people don't know what to do with the land, in Perak, there's some entrepreneurs who actually capitalize on the abandoned land holdings of absentee landlords. So they know that these landlords, these are people who have inherited lands from their parents and grandparents, but are not anymore working in the villages. So these new entrepreneurs have sort of taken it upon themselves to clear the land and planted oil palm. Quite a lot of conflict as a result of it, because there's a lot of money they were made of oil palm. And when the landlords discovered that this was happening, they also wanted a share of the profit. And so there was a bit of tension because of that. Now, of course, these new entrepreneurs say, well, you're not really concerned about what's happening in the village, so let us take care of it, right? So in one case, for example, they eventually settle on a 70-30 kind of profit sharing, with this new entrepreneur getting 70% of the share and the landlord getting 30%. So that kind of arrangement. Okay, the Felda case is the most controversial rural space. Settlers are all migrants actually within the Felda settlement. They're single commercial cropping. They have provisional title to the land. They don't actually get full title, provisional, meaning that even if they do get, they cannot fragment the land. When they die, they can only kind of pass on the land to one of their descendants, their son or one of the children. Organized planting, corporatized villages. There's a lot of studies on this about how the villages are so tightly organized. So the status of the peasants have kind of moved from peasants to settlers to shareholders earning dividends. And what's important about the Felda settlers is that they're crucial vote bank for UMNO. I'll show you some maps. I don't know whether you can see this map. This is a map of Felda settlements. Now the pink area, the pink constituencies are all won by the opposition, the Pakatan Rakyat. And all the blue ones are all BN strongholds. And all the dotted, you see the dotted ones, the plantation and small holdings of Felda, you can see that majority are in the blue areas. In fact, the opposition can only win constituencies that do not have Felda settlements. And that explains why they want Selangor, because Selangor actually only has about 1 or 2 Felda settlements. Kelantan has got very few. This is Kelantan. Again, the red would be the PR seats, and the blue are the BN seats, and the Felda settlements are outside of the PR seats. Perak, similarly. Okay, Perak is kind of a 50-50 state where the opposition won quite a lot of seats. And this is Johor. Now, Johor has got the most number of Felda settlements. And Johor is like the most important bastion of UMNO. You could see that they've got the most number of Felda schemes, very few seats won by the opposition. I'm just bringing this in because I think it is important to actually question whether these are actually rural areas. Okay, are they rural areas? So this is my last slide, some concluding reflections here. There's a need for, I think, theoretical refinement of the rural-urban dichotomy. Secondly, I think the rural in all of us are really just lost in historical memory and anthropology. Yes, they exist as a kind of history, but in practice, I think the rural does not really exist anymore, not in its pristine form. And I think the extent and measure of rural economy needs revision. So in Malaysia, oil palm economy has overtaken all the other crops, which is why food crops will not be able to survive for long. Rural is also an untapped or forgotten resource, and rural as vote banks and location of new class, ethnicity, and gender negotiation. So in the case of Felda, it's really kind of trying to converge ethnicity with rurality. Okay, because Lauda is where the Malay settlers are. And wherever, because they vote a certain party, because of racial factor or because they organize in a certain, this corporatized setup, there's a bit of loyalty and indebtedness also, all roll up into one. Anyway, so these are some of the conclusion reflections, and this is all I've time for. Thank you very much.
Now, the organizers come. While we are waiting for, are you getting there?
Yeah. Sorry, we were way late just now. So we were late. We were way late, yeah.
It's
We
okay.
didn't prepare ourselves.
Alright, it's okay. As long as we are full after makan.
Okay. All right. So let me first thank Professor Kamsel for his kind offer to comment on the papers. Or maybe I should wait until after the conference, but I'll thank you. I'm sure he'll have a lot to say about these. I really appreciate the papers for this one. I think that it's interesting. All of these papers were mostly prepared individually, but I think that they go together really well, talking about transformations that are taking place in rural Malaysia today. The paper I'm going to present is some thoughts on things that I've been seeing and thinking about in the last year to 2 years, where I've been going back to do some research in some places in rural Malaysia. My research sites are primarily the same kampung that Mazi mentioned before, in Sungai Seperti in northern Perak, where I did research in the 1990s, and also some research that's been going on in Ulu Selangor, around Batam Kali area. What I want to talk about today is the emergence of something that I am calling kebun culture, mainly because it's alliterative, but I haven't figured out what else to call it. But talking about the emergence of a new sort of rurality in Malaysia. And so this is an overview. I'll talk a little bit about this idea of the kebun as a new form of rurality. Of course, kebun have been around for a long time, and I'm going to talk about why they're tied up in a new form of rurality today. I'll compare three kebun that give three different types of engagements with the kebun, and then some of the implications of kebun culture. Basically, my three arguments about kebun culture, as I'm calling it, are first of all the idea, following on previous arguments I've made, that the kebun are becoming ancillary to urban society, rather than being a kind of integral part of some kampung rural society. The kebun are ancillary or attached to urban society. Secondly, the implications of kebun as being individualized projects. In contrast to, you might think the kampung is essentially a social project, right? The kampung, masyarakat kampung is a social entity. But kebun, or in English, right, the orchards, are not social entities so much as they're individualized projects. And the third is the broadening of the meaning of kebun because of all of these changes and trends. So, briefly, I'm going to compare three different kebun, and I've called them this by using acronyms or using titles instead of names. There's Datuk's kebun, Mat's kebun, and Abang's kebun. So Datuk's kebun, the first one I'll talk about is the kebun as a weekend retreat, and very specifically, weekend retreat for this particular case, an individual who works in Kuala Lumpur, and as a weekend retreat, and very much an individual project in a rural place, and one that's cultivated or developed by others, by workers who he pays to develop his kebun. The second is Mat's kebun, and this is much more of a typical rural kampung kebun that's been around for decades, perhaps centuries, but has been transformed in many ways because of the changes in the urbanization of Malay society. And then the final one is Abang's Kebun, which is the kebun as a retirement plan. And this is, I'll get to that at the end, but the idea of having a kebun as a place to potentially retire to or to have as an asset in your retirement age. Okay. So the first one, just to show you a few of these kebun, right? The first one is the Dato's kebun, which is on Malay Reserve land, and so purchased by him in 2000 or 2011. And it's on a very, you can't quite see just how steep and sloping the land is, but it's a very, very steep slope of land that he bought. In fact, originally, I forget if it was a hectare or an acre, but it was something like a 1 hectare or 1 acre square plot of land, but it slopes enough that, according to his project manager, there's actually 1.2 hectares because it's on a slope, so he gets more land for his buck, right, or for his ringgit. So anyway, this is a fairly large space. It was originally bought, it was completely forested. There's nothing, I mean, it was just secondary, but it was very jungle. And then in the process of a couple of years, the workers there have transformed it, landscaped it, and put in a variety, I mean, there were a number of trees there, various fruiting trees that they left, took out all the underbrush and other trees, and then have landscaped it in various ways with paths, a stream. He didn't even know when he bought it, there was a stream at the bottom. He didn't even know it was there because it was so forested. But, do all of this landscaping, put in a large, I don't know if you can see it there in the background, but there's a large bird cage with various exotic birds and so forth. So this is very much a project that's done in order to sort of create this rural space to use as a weekend retreat, right, with an overlook, looking over the mountains and so forth. Right? And this is the small house, weekend retreat house built there. And it's the interior of the house. Again, a lot of this nostalgic Malay kampung things, but not as a place to live in permanently, but as a place to go on the weekend, right? And this was a brilliant idea, put up a Ramly burger stand, because you can make anything you want, you can stay overnight, you can get up in the morning and fry yourself some eggs or whatever, make yourself a Ramly burger, right? So a couple of ideas about this, or thoughts about this, however, is that this is about 1 hour outside of Kuala Lumpur, and if you've gone outside of Kuala Lumpur and really looked around, there's a lot of these kinds of projects going on. A lot of people in Kuala Lumpur, those people who have enough money to do it, are buying up land around Kuala Lumpur, buying kebun, and developing the kebun. So he purchased the land, this land, for example, for 100,000 ringgit. Interestingly, as soon as he purchased it, land prices shot up everywhere. So everybody around him wanted to sell him their land for 200,000 ringgit. So this, of course, and this is going on again around, especially around KL, of course, but I think what's interesting to ask is whether it's going on in some other places, maybe on a smaller scale, right? There's an ongoing project then of improving and landscaping the land, but this is very, very post-productive, right? It's not at all about agricultural production, although there are fruiting trees and so forth, but it's all about having a weekend retreat, a place to go, and to enjoy nature. Another important thing about this is that this particular person I'm showing Dato here is originally from Negeri Sembilan, but very specifically chose not to buy land back in his kampung, but rather to buy land somewhere else that you could, first of all, easily go to on the weekend, but secondly, that is not tied to the kampung. Because the problem is, in buying land back in the kampung and involving oneself in kampung activities, you're involved in a whole lot of social relationships, which this person is not completely disengaged from those, but he wants a place where he can go and relax, and where he doesn't have to be hit up by neighbors and cousins and so forth, asking him about starting new projects or investing money or those kinds of things. So this kind of individuated project is one way in which we see a desire by very urbanized people to want to return to rurality and to experience the rural. And this is a person who grew up in a kampong, right, and grew up very much in a farming area, and ran around and played in the streams when he was a boy and so forth. Now wants to return to that, but returning to it in a very, very different form, not Balai Kampung, and not reproducing the traditional Malay kampung, but reproducing a new kind of rurality. Another aspect, and another thing too, and this is a sort of secondary thing, but just to mention, there's also in this area sekolah tafis, right, which are, I think, a fascinating phenomenon. A number of these that are popping up all over Malaysia, sekolah tafis. And this particular sekolah tafis, a very interesting history that I can't go into, but it was kind of an itinerant school that was moving, shifting from place to place, trying to find a place that it could develop. And the ustad who's here, Ustad Muhammad, and the itinerant ethnographer,